It's every guy's nightmare to have their significant other move into their workspace. Frank Isola, I don't know if you know what this is like, but this is just Rich's own living hell when he hands over the desk to me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, I mean, we're kind of surrounded. This is probably the most estrogen-heavy show you've ever done, but welcome to the Rich Eisen Show. Frank and I worked together a long time ago covering the NBA, so it's really great to see you.
Yeah, really good to see you. So were you saying me now being on the show is your personal hell? Was that what you were implying?
What I said, Frank, was every guy's personal hell is probably having their wife take over their job for them. And in Chris's case, he has a pigsty of a desk. So whenever I sit in for Chris, I basically wipe the whole place down with Clorox, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Yep.
But it feels like another woman being here with him, like mishearing us and like taking it the wrong way.
I heard you. My biggest fear is that my wife finds out my security code for this. That's my biggest fear.
By the way,
I'm kidding.
Like, by the way, like, honey, why were you with 3 other women this morning? And the answer is I was talking about Jalen Brunson. Now, how's that for a transition? Have you ever seen 5 fouls in a quarter like Jacob Brunson?
It's amazing, right? I've been at games where LeBron James did actually foul out. I think it was an Indiana-Miami game, and it was like seeing Halley's Comet, something like that happened. I was saying for LeBron to get 5 fouls in a quarter, he would probably have to take a baseball bat and start hitting guys. Even then, the refs would say, well, it was a natural swinging motion, so it's not really a foul. But considering a player of that stature to get 5 fouls in a quarter, but if you go back to the start of that quarter, Jaylen Brown, Josh Hart got into it with about 11:30 left in the third quarter. And I think at that point, the referees decided we're going to call it really tight. The Knicks took 18 free throws in that quarter, and I think the Boston Celtics took 18. The Knicks took 8. So there were 26 free throws. The quarter was way too long. There were too many fouls, and nobody knows that better than Jalen Brunson.
But Jalen is so funny because Rich is a diehard Knicks fan, and I heard screaming throughout the house, and I'm thinking one of the kids is dead, and I get in there, and it's a 5th foul. And I was just curious, like, you know, for you, because you are who you are, like watching the series go down, what were your thoughts? Not only, like, you mentioned that obviously it was too long, what have you, but as you look at this series, where do you see it going?
You know, I still think the Knicks are in control. And I thought, you know, the regular season that the Knicks had, they didn't beat Boston, they didn't beat Cleveland, they didn't beat Oklahoma City. And I get it. That is a good storyline during the season, but none of that mattered. And I thought the way the Knicks were playing, winning those games on Detroit. I do the morning radio show with Brian Scalabrine. He obviously does the Celtic games. And I bet him on game 1. I really thought that the Knicks were going to get a game up in Boston. I didn't think they were going to get 2, nor did I think Boston was going to blow those 20-point leads. But you ladies know this. When you lose games that you're supposed to win, it's so hard in the playoffs to make up for that. Cleveland should have won game 2 against Indiana. They never recovered from that. Boston, yes, game 1 they probably should have had. Game 2 they definitely should have had. They've yet to catch up for doing that. Now, if they win tonight, then they're all caught up and they have a game 7 on their home court. But when you give games like that away, because you knew at some point the Knicks were going to have a good game, and they certainly did in game 4. But it feels like Boston is up 4-1 in the series, but Boston still has to win 2 more games to win the series.
Yeah, and on the flip side, funny you mentioned Brian. I covered him at USC when he was there. I think that was like another 50,000 years ago. But you mentioned the series, and it looks almost as if the Celtics are rallying around their fallen leader and playing almost crisper, smarter basketball.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. You're always gonna play a little differently, and I think a lot of times with the superstar players, that they tend to do isolation a little bit too much. And I think you saw in the last game the ball movement was better, but a big part of it was Jaylen Brown.
Yep.
Jaylen Brown. There's always been this thing out there, which I never understand with a lot of the players. They want their own team. They want to be the guy. Well, guess what? He's going to have that opportunity for a while because Jayson Tatum's not going to be back at the start of next season. And I think for Jaylen Brown, to his credit, it started in game 5. He became kind of the guy. And it's not just about scoring. It's about getting it done on the defensive end. You know, when Boston has a lot of pride. For me, this is the biggest road game that they've played since they were in Miami a couple of years ago, Eastern Conference Finals. Remember, they had lost the first 3 games, won the next 2. They went back to Boston. I'm sorry, they went back to Miami. They needed to win that game on the road to force a game 7. This is the biggest road game they've had since then, but they've been the best road team in the NBA this year.
So who wins the series, Frank?
I still think it's going to be the Knicks. You mentioned Jalen Brunson when we started, and I think Jalen Brunson is going to have a big game tonight. The weird thing about him fouling out is that he's going to come in more motivated than ever, and he doesn't need much to motivate him. Plus, he only played 33 minutes. So in the long run, him coming out of that game when he did I think it's going to end up helping the Knicks.
Yeah, the series is amazing. We have another Game 7 back heading to OKC. What do you expect there?
I think that Denver has been the better team. I understand that, Oklahoma City won 68 games during the regular season. It's an outstanding team, but Nikola Jokic has been terrific. And if you look at Game 5, Denver had that game. Jokic was 4 of 6 in the fourth quarter. The rest of his teammates were 1 for 15. And there was that stretch where no one could make a shot, where if someone could have made a shot, I think they would have won the game. If they could have held the lead at 7, even with about 3 minutes to go, I think they were going to win. Last night, the kid Julian Strawther, he came in and he made a shot. So as long as, Jamal Murray could play the way that he did, Christian Brown had a career playoff high. I'm not expecting that to happen again. But at some point, Jokic needs a little help in the fourth quarter. I think Denver's the better team. I always go with the better team in a Game 7. I don't care where the game is being played. So I'm going to pick Denver in Game 7.
Yeah, and Strawther, he just kept hitting him during that 10-0 run. I think he had 15 points in the, what was it? Maybe
yes, he did.
In the second half, was it?
Yep.
He played incredibly, and we saw a lot of their secondary players step up, where it didn't just have to be the Jokic experience there. And if that's the way it's going to be rolling in, then that looks like a really great game ahead for them.
Yeah, and you're right too about every time during the playoffs if you're going to win a championship, there are games when other guys have to do something. And for Oklahoma City in Game 5, it was Lou Dort. He hit those 3 threes in about a 2-minute span in the fourth quarter when no one could score. So that kind of was Lou Dort bailing them out. And I think last night in Game 6, it was Julian Strawther. He was the one bailing out the Denver Nuggets. The kid that went to Gonzaga. Gonzaga's produced, I think they have 15 players in the NBA. And he actually played 1 year with Chet Holmgren. So he's played in a big program before. He came in only scoring 24 total points in his playoff career. And last night, like you said, he puts up 15 in that second half. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Jamal Murray, of course, Sarah's theory is he wasn't sick, he was perfectly fine. Is that right? Is that your theory?
I absolutely think that.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know what? You know how it is. When we all show up for work, we then say, well, I was really sick. I wasn't feeling well, but I showed up. How is it? Look at the alternative, Suzy. What was he not going to do? Play? Yeah. If he doesn't play and they lose, everyone would say, how do you not play in the game?
Oh my God,
you
they
got
kill him.
the next 6 months to basically get better. You got to play in the game. So it always makes for a good storyline. And you know this. Michael Jordan was the best at it. And I'm not saying he wasn't sick, but in Utah, he was sick. His last ever All-Star game in a Bulls uniform was in New York City at Madison Square Garden. He didn't show up at the practice. The big thing was that he was sick. He was sick. You knew he was going to show up and play well. So I think Jamal Murray knows how to build a pretty good story that we in the media are going to eat up, and he certainly did it last night.
I would rather my coworkers not come to work when they're sick. I'm just a little, maybe a different take than everyone else.
Wait a second.
I'm sick, I don't go to work.
If you're down 3-2 in a series, you're going to want them to show up.
Yeah,
It's a Monday in January.
By the way,
it's a Monday in January. Stay home. That's what you're right about that.
And so many elimination games that Murray has powered them through. So they needed that little bit of the extra magic. And by the way, you mentioned that Michael game, because the difference is this: Michael was green. You remember watching that game? He was green.
Yeah.
He was throwing up in buckets on the side. It was disgusting. I remember watching that, and I looked. So when Murray comes out, I'm like, hey, he looks fine.
Yeah.
Now that I have kids, I'm like, you're fine. Get out there.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to be at that game, and that was the great thing about Michael Jordan, because he was always going to be the story. If he played well, which was about 90% of the time, he was a story. And then if you were there on a night where he didn't play well, that was also the story. But that was even as you were covering him during that time, you knew you were covering essentially the modern day Babe Ruth. You knew it was a big deal. And Michael Jordan, what I loved about the guy, he just rose to the occasion every game. And that's what you see in the playoffs. That's why, everyone talks about depth, and, certainly it helps to have a lot of good players. But ultimately, you need your best players, your star players, to play at a different level in these big moments. And that's why for the Knicks, I'm sure they're hoping to see that from Jalen Brunson. And for the Boston Celtics, they're going to need that kind of performance out of Jaylen Brown.
Frank Isola joins us right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Give me your favorite Jordan memory.
My favorite Jordan memory probably be, well, he did have a dunk. I was at the game when he dunked on Ewing and Charles Oakley. It was amazing to be sitting courtside to see that. Back then, as you know, Susie, they used to put us the media courtside. Now we sit, I think, above the rafters above the banners
lot.
that are hanging down. But it would be for me, it would be the shot that he took against Brian Russell, because you thought this was going to be it for edition of the Chicago Bulls, and that Michael Jordan may not play again. He ended up playing again, but that was his last ever shot in a Bulls uniform. It was pretty cool. Whether or not he pushed off, the Utah Jazz will still complain about that, but that was a pretty cool moment.
Quick question. Do you think that that's why he had his tongue out all the time so people could check and see if he had strep throat?
Look at you. I like that. I like that. You know,
Just a hunch.
I think they used to tell him at North Carolina that he had to be careful because they were always worried that he might bite his tongue off.
Yeah.
Yep,
Oh, man,
exactly.
really?
Oh my God.
Yep.
Oh my God! And then we're
Something
showing
I've never done, bitten my tongue.
No.
No, but sometimes I wish I did a little bit more often. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Same.
Frank,
By the way, what do you think of? Do you have a question? Want to hop in?
I just wanted to ask what your dog's name is.
How do you know?
What do you
I have a
mean?
dog.
This is what I do for a living.
They're my-
I know things about people.
Yeah.
No, my dog.
She knows the code to your phone.
By the way, sorry, honey.
My dog's name is Gigi. We named her after the famous Italian goalie Gigi Buffon.
Ooh.
So she responds to. Can you see her there?
Oh, is this on your
Pull back a little
Instagram?
bit. There you go.
Oh,
there you
cute.
go.
What a
that's
baby.
Oh, no, she's unbelievable dog. I love dogs. So.
Oh, that's
I'm like
wonderful.
that.
Maybe you can dog sit mine. She's only
I'll do it.
destroyed half my house.
I'll do it for free. I'll do it. I love dogs.
We are a very dog-friendly show here, as long as you rescue. Otherwise, we hold a grudge. But that's just me.
I have a
That's just
rescue.
me.
No, rescue all day.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You.
Exactly.
What about Giannis? What do we think? Where's he going to land? He's not staying in
Astor-
Milwaukee. I mean, come on.
You know this. He's going to go to Astoria, Queens, the home of the biggest Greek population, I think, outside of Athens, Greece. Now, I don't know. I still think it has to come, will he go to Milwaukee and say, it might be the best thing for me and the best thing for you if I get traded? I know he loves it there. He likes the whole small city thing. I think if he goes anywhere, I think Houston makes so much sense. Houston has done this before, where they went out and got Clyde Drexler, they got Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, James Harden. There's also something else at work there. The coach, Ime Udoka, Nigerian roots. You have Akeem Olajuwon, Nigerian roots. The same thing with Giannis Antetokounmpo. They have the assets that I think would satisfy the Milwaukee Bucks. So I don't think it's the craziest thing. I could just picture him in a Houston uniform if he's not wearing a Milwaukee Buck uniform next year.
Yeah, I don't think he's wearing a Buck uniform. I think there's just I think you're going to see a lot of changes in Milwaukee, unfortunately for them. Don't you believe so?
Yeah.
I'm not talking code here. I mean, I'm talking it could be a wholesale change for Milwaukee.
No, I think you're right. And that's why for Damian Lillard, remember, he wanted to go to Miami. The Milwaukee Bucks traded for him. And then part of that trade was Drew Holiday goes to Boston. So the trade certainly worked out for Boston because Drew Holiday won a championship there. Miami's been terrible. Well, not terrible, but they haven't been very good the last 2 years. And Milwaukee, I think with Damian Lillard and Giannis together, I think they've won one playoff game. And, of course, Damian Lillard has the Achilles. So Giannis could be off playing somewhere else, maybe in Houston, and Damian Lillard would be recovering from Achilles surgery next season.
Oh, it's brutal.
Yep.
Who's the sneaky surprise team that could put a package together for him?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what? I wouldn't rule out Brooklyn just because he's been linked there before, and it is New York, so maybe that's the possibility. The Golden State Warriors, I don't know how they would do it. For a lot of these teams, it's going to be difficult. But I think, you look at Golden State and what Steph Curry said yesterday on the exit interviews, the whole idea of Jimmy Butler, Draymond, even Steve Kerr, the head coach, and Steph all have 2 years left on their contracts. Doesn't mean that none of them will be there beyond the next 2 years, but he kind of made it clear that our window is 2 more years. And if they could somehow go out, they have a ton of draft picks. I don't know about Jonathan Kuminga, if that would interest Milwaukee. But I also wouldn't rule out Golden State just because I think they'll try to go all in to get a player like Giannis.
Bingo. That's what I was thinking. I wouldn't put it past Steve Kerr to be working on something like that because they're not done there. No. Every time I read something like Steph Curry's window is closing, I'm like, is it though? I mean, he's got time. Is it really?
Go watch him play. Go watch him play in person and go watch him warm up and see if his time's close to being done. That guy's still a brilliant player.
I mean, some fat guy in a bar is like, oh yeah, his window's closing. I'm like, is it really? It looked pretty good to me.
It's always that fat guy in the bar.
Frank, it's always the fat guy in the bar.
It always is.
It's
always
always the fat guy in the bar.
The Philly girl knows. That's their specialty.
Or it's me in the bar.
Exactly.
Or it's you. Frank, thanks again for your time. Great to see you. It's been a while.
Ladies, take care. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
you.
Tell your dog we said
Take
hi.
care.
Yeah.
I will. Thank you. Roof.
Anybody who wants to talk dogs in this show. I'm just saying we can talk schedule release show and we can talk dogs.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.